up,
good.
next up, I would like to invite up to the podium shortly Michele Levine. Now, we did mention at the beginning of the night that there was going to be a launch announcement tonight, and in fact it is Responsible Technology Australia that is stepping up. Do you remember we were talking about some of the challenges that we face as a society and the way that we're adapting to that? And I think the panel made some very astute observations about what they would change about the internet. And I think that this sentiment around reflecting the kind of norms that we expect within a society need to be somehow, and we don't really know the answer to that, but somehow some thinking should be done around how we migrate in the next 30 years to, with the wisdom of hindsight, what would we do differently if let's say we're 30 years ahead from now. What would we be wanting to think about today that can ensure that the next 30 years of the development of the internet delivers all the promise that we hope for and maybe starts to address more of the human issues? So I'd like to invite Michele Levine to the podium. She is the CEO of Roy Morgan. It's a household word you must know as a definitive source of public opinion and evidence that is often used in policy making. Michele will be speaking on behalf of Responsible Technology Australia, and I think it's better if I leave it to her to outline the aims and the aspirations of this new organisation, which we welcome on the policy front. Thank you very much for your support of this event, and I'll hand over to Michele.
Thanks very much, and good evening everybody. So this evening we've actually heard everybody talking about celebrating 30 years of the internet, but today also represents another milestone, another reason to celebrate. Today we witness Responsible Technology Australia, or RTA, stepping onto the digital stage. And as Peter said, it's almost as if it's been building to this conversation, which we didn't realise was going to happen. But it couldn't be happening at a better time. We find ourselves as Australians riding a storm of distrust, of sectional self-interest, policy claim and counterclaim, and this involves the regulators, it involves government, tech giants like Facebook and Google, and all the other players. But as CEO of Roy Morgan, I know that listening to the voice of the people, listening to what people are worried about, is actually where this all needs to begin. And of course, Roy Morgan's been listening to those voices, asking people how they felt about things since 1941. And so as CEO of Roy Morgan, I'm really proud to have been, first of all, invited to participate as part of the RTA, and then to have agreed as a company to become a founding partner of Responsible Technology Australia. So RTA is very early in its stages, but it will be a uniquely Australian voice for responsibility and data security in the Australian technology sector. It aims to benefit all Australian users of technology. It's a convening not-for-profit which aims to begin a dialogue across sectors. So we don't have all the answers. This is the beginning of a dialogue, the beginning of a conversation, gathering people's views across a whole range of sectors about how we might build what you'd hope would be a common sense coalition in relation to technology, its risks and rewards. So to mark this event, you would be unsurprised to know that Roy Morgan's done a survey. And so, very simple survey asking the Australian people whether on balance they think that the internet has brought more problems than it solves, or whether it's created more problems, or whether it's solved more problems than it creates. And the results are positive. About 2/3 of people, in fact 68.8% of Australians to be exact, believe that the internet has solved more problems than it's created. Now, there's a little bit of difference. Men are a bit more likely to think that the internet's solving more problems than it's created than are women. Younger people a little bit more than older people, but you know, there's not much in it. It seems that overall the internet is seen as a good thing. So when we ask them why it's so good. Overwhelmingly, it's all about ease of access to information of all kinds, and that enables us as a nation to solve problems, whether they're little problems or big problems. It's about staying connected. It's about communities, being in touch with people. That was a really big thing. And overall, making life easier. That move towards zero friction that we're all looking for, the internet has helped. Those of us who are worried about the internet are worried because of the possibility and the reality of spreading misinformation at a rapid rate, fake news and those sorts of things. People are worried about cyber security, they're worried about scams, all of those things that we're very well aware of. Some are worried that it distracts from the real world, that if people are actually online, they're not in the real world. So that's an issue for some people. Bullying and harassment is an issue for some people. And just simply too much information is something that is worrying a whole bunch of people. So but overall, it's positive. Overall, it's very positive. So looking back to the idea of 30 years ago, or about then, the birth of the internet, I realised I was actually there in the thick of it. 30 years ago, I was at Melbourne University, and we were looking at those kinds of questions. What are the far-reaching implications of the relationship between man and machine? We were asking questions, as you do as a student, what happens when companies are more powerful than the countries that they operate in? And one of the probably the first and most important projects that I realise now was a project that I was involved in with TRL, the Telecom Research Laboratories, and they did wonderful work in those days. Just cast your mind back to 1981, no mobile phone, no internet, no Netflix, when telephones were telephones. So our job was to actually test what would happen if we added some new features to the telephone. So we added push-button dialing, or dialing like that, a microphone that would allow you to talk hands-free, last number redial button, and you could store 3 numbers that you only had to push a button. So these features were amazing, and to create the prototype, it looked a little bit like a small fridge. It was about this big. And my job was to go out and recruit some businesses and people to take the small fridge-like phone and pop it in and see what difference it made to their lives. So we surveyed them before, during and after, and we also tracked all of the activity that happened on their phones. Well, the 2 streams of data showed very interesting things. What did we find? When we asked them, it wasn't super helpful, people didn't think it was all that good, didn't think it was going to change their life, couldn't sort of see why they needed 3 numbers stored, they remembered them anyway. But, do you know what happened? It doubled the calls that they made. It doubled their network of people that they spoke to. And so those little tiny things had this explosive impact. Now, isn't that the beginning? We didn't know, but all of a sudden our behaviour changed extraordinarily. So now when we see the changes that we're seeing due to technology and the way that we connect, it all was pretty obvious in those very first days that we were studying these things. So that kind of experience gave me a really irrepressible sense of wonder about the ways that research and technology, working as 2 hands in one glove, can actually help improve the lives of billions of people around the world. Just soon after that, I joined Roy Morgan. By the end of the 90s, the internet, specifically Google, changed everything. In the first decade of the 21st century, Facebook and Apple iPhone changed everything again. So 2 things occur to me. The first is how amazed I am that Facebook and Google have so quickly been able to change how we work, learn, communicate and live. And the second is actually how recent it all is. We couldn't imagine today living without a smartphone, without Google Maps and GPS. I mean, it's unimaginable. But over a decade ago, there weren't those sort of smartphones. But the revolution of media and transformation of political, social and economic landscapes have actually propelled us at this extraordinary velocity into the future, and into a future that no one predicted. And if they said they did, I'd be really surprised if they're not lying. So the political landscape's changed, for example, really dramatically. And so has the economic landscape. If we look at the world's 10 biggest companies by market capitalisation. Half of them are tech companies: Apple, Alphabet or Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. And what about the social landscape? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the others have totally transformed how we contact and communicate socially and even professionally. Just started 15 years ago, unimaginable. But there is a downside to this growth when growth is so fast and so far-reaching. And we all know this, but with so many social media users, the potential for misuse of those mountains of data is really big. After all, it's called big data, isn't it? The Cambridge Analytica that claimed to have won the White House for Trump by using Google, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat and YouTube, accessing data from 50 million unwitting Facebook users to target 10,000 different ads to different micro-targeted audiences. So these tech giants that I listed just a moment ago are actually bigger than the economies of most countries. They're certainly more influential. So how can governments respond to these real or potential data piracy or privacy breaches? Well, one thing is really kind of clear. More regulation is not the only answer. There's not just one way. The answer must lie also in sound analysis and common sense. So where's all this leading? We all need to be vigilant and alive to the risks that form that part of this kind of fabric of the digital and data ecosystem that we're playing in. We need to find ways to quantify that risk. Of course, that's Roy Morgan as well. And we're committed to evidence-based policy outcomes. Our world is about data. It's about asking people and making sure we're really capturing what people say. And that's also the aim of Responsibility or Responsible Technology Australia, RTA. So for example, Roy Morgan, for many, many years, we've been measuring distrust. Who do people distrust? Which companies? And why do they distrust them in a very open-ended way so that we can really pick up what's going on in the zeitgeist? Banks have for over a decade been among the most distrusted brands in Australia. We knew that, we told them that, we were measuring it, and the risk that was revealed by that soaring trust was pretty much ignored. There was a kind of moral blindness going on. Very dangerous. Well, the outcome of that moral blindness in that industry was the disastrous behaviour of some of the big banks and the subsequent revelations of the Royal Commission. The methodology that we're using to find out what worries people, why they distrust people, is like an epidemiological measurement. To measure an epidemic of distrust, of fear. And it's a very decision-making, fact-based management system to identify the risk at the big end of town and give voice to those people at the other end of town. So it is about the people as well as all of the players. But let's be very clear, this is not just about bad behaviour or negative stories. Facebook, after that Cambridge Analytica and the Christchurch mass shooting scandal, Facebook basically became everybody's poster child for evil. Everybody's poster child for the evils of social media. But Facebook understands that trust is clean and they understand that distrust is toxic. All of our data shows that Facebook's distrust is actually decreasing. So that's a really, really good thing. It's decreasing dramatically as they take active steps to improve their position. So I think one of the things that's in our favour as we seek to go forward is once a toxin has a name, once it can be measured, good leaders can recognise it and act on it. It's interesting to note that the government at this stage is actually more distrusted than banks right now, and social media is the most distrusted channel in the media ecosystem. But critically, we don't need to demonise success. It's really easy to demonise success. We need to find a middle path or a third way, a kind of conclusive way that brings people together, leading experts to clarify the conflict, actually look at them, understand what are the conflicts, to shine a light on a new way. And that's what the RTA way is. So it's our view that the leaders in these huge technology giants are not evil, they're not actively corrupt, but we also know that the bigger the company and the faster it got that way, the greater the potential for moral blindness. and the greater the preparedness to turn a blind eye or look the other way. So we can't have complacency. What we need is vigilance, as we heard earlier today, transparency, and a really smart way forward. And I would love to see a world where the C-suite of every major company, particularly the tech giants, has a new position, a new CEO, the Chief Ethics Officer. Imagine a culture of corporate governance where truth, trust, and transparency was the mantra. This is where the ethicist would actually design an ethical lens for use by the CEO and for the company directors on the board to review every decision that was made, and where the decisions that were made were visible, probably up on a website, on the company's website for everyone to see. So that's another reason I'm very excited, and Roy Morgan's very excited to be part of the RTA with its aim to be guided by ethical principles. We've been asking companies for some time to put distrust on their risk register. That's not enough these days. Doesn't go far enough in a world with so much big data, so much personal data and information in the hands of so few. We really need a better way. So finally, I want to say this is not a kind of Pollyanna-ish view. I consider myself a sort of fully autonomous, self-regulating adult, and I think that condition is scalable. I think most of us in this room would like to see ourselves the same way. I don't think most of us like the idea of Big Brother, but nor do we want trust to be just handed out to people who haven't yet earned it. Distrust has got to be the canary in our coal mine. So the new organisation, Responsible Technology Australia, RTA, has the potential to apply that scrutiny and to help the digital platforms, the tech giants and our governments all behave in that more transparent, fully autonomous, self-regulating way. Wouldn't that be refreshing? So in conclusion, my hope and our hope for Responsible Technology Australia is that as it grows and develops and convenes the best thinkers to determine Australia's position on these big questions, it will actually help the tech giants, it'll help our governments and our community find common ground for common good. So we look forward to working with all of you over the next 30 years of the internet. Thank you all.
Okay, well thank you for that, Michelle. That was, I think, a really refreshing sort of take on some of the approaches that we've applied in the past that maybe we can do a bit better. Can I just ask you to listen up? We're about to move. We've had a fair bit of substantive discussion tonight already around some of the sort of heavier issues and maybe some of the reminiscences, but we're about to change gear and we're about to move into a fun component, so I urge you to stay. Yes, it's time for a bit of fun. Thank you. The first thing I want to do, we're about to unveil some technology here in about 10 minutes. We believe this is a world first. You've seen it here tonight, or you will have, and you'll be able to tell everyone that you're here at the unveiling of the most far-reaching application of this technology for the application that we're about to apply it, and you're probably wondering what on earth I'm talking about. But before we do that, and you'll be invited to put on your hats in a minute too, I want to just, has everyone had a look inside the show bags tonight? Okay, well then here's a good time to pull out the show bag. Now look, the first thing we've got to acknowledge is that we've got a very nice book to take away tonight. Thank you to Palo Alto Networks for providing us with this amazing book. I need people down the back just to...
come on, folks, shush!
We're just recording this session tonight, and I think the background noise is probably we're going to make the video available as a historical record, so if you can just hold off on the conversation for a little bit longer. I want to just take you through the contents of the show bag. The party hat, the significance of this is far more profound than you probably realise, and that will be revealed shortly. Before that, we've got a little animal in here. Now this is a reprise from a little gift that we did in 2007, I think it was, in the same venue. And you'll see there's a little slogan there, and if you didn't bring your glasses tonight or the light's a little dim, you can have a look at that when you go home. But that is a tribute to, I guess, the purpose of this evening in a very light-handed way. Also, is your faith in the internet starting to waver? Maybe it is, and so we've given you a packet of Kool-Aid and a glass cup, and this is a 30-year supply. So if you feel like you're not quite sure if this is the industry and the revolution you want to be part of, I advise you to take out the plastic cup and pour the entire contents of this sachet into the cup. I assure you that it's all natural. And you can consume it tonight and get someone to photograph it, because this is evidence of your commitment to the next 30 years of the internet. So that's the Kool-Aid. We also have a packet of nerds in the show bag. I don't know why that's there, but this is something that you might consume as compensation for not being at home for Halloween tonight. So we're giving you a sugar hit there. We've got some very nice. Remember I said there's this postcard here, who did we forget? Don't forget to fill that out. We've got some sponsor material. Encrypt Cellular is one of the major donors of some of the prizes that we're going to give away shortly. So thank you to Alex and to Jordan, and we'll be bringing them out in a minute. I'm going to step off the stage. We're going to set up this technology demonstration, and we're going to kick off in about 10 minutes from now. The prizes are substantial, and you will need those tickets in your bag in order to claim.